Now Ireland's newest maritime museum has opened in Passage West in County Cork. I visited there recently and met with the chairperson, Angela Murphy, who showed me around.
We opened in July. We had the people's opening, as we call it. In July, we were open for the summer, but then we had the official opening by the dignitaries, by the county mayor and Cork County Council. They were here and we opened then for them in November. We're actually closed now for the season and we'll be opening again, say, the end of February, start of March.
Tell me something about Passage West. We're down here near the mouths of Cork Harbour. Just across the way is Varome, or was Varome, the shipyard, all of these other industrial places nearby.
No, I suppose really Passage, going back in early years, that when the steamships, when any ship used to come up in the harbour, they couldn't go further than Horsehead, which is just up the river there. So between Passage, Monkstown, Cove, where Marino is across the road, across the river, this is where the mouth of Cork Harbour was. This is where all of the shipping used to come into, and this really is the heart of Cork Harbour before they were able to dredge and most of the ships go up the river then. But for how many years you'd look and as you can see there's photographs around here of many of the ships and you see the masts and the sails and everything. Around here is where Cork Harbour was.
Now let's look at some of the timeline. Here on the wall now you have Passage West timeline.
Yes, we could have went back to the 1600s, 1600s, but we said, no, we had to pick a timeline that at least in the, say, 1800s to 1900s, that people would have more of an interest. As you can see there, we're starting off in 1807. Kit's Bathing House opens, offering warm and cold sea baths. That was just down by, say, between Glenbrook and Monkstown, where the ferry is now going over to Cove. I suppose really that people wouldn't realise what was here at that stage. That was really the up-and-coming thing that I suppose people pay how much money now going away to thermal suites and everything, and they had it on their doorstep. And you had people coming down from Cork. You had people that would be coming over in ships over to Cove. They'd get off and they'd come over and they'd go to these baths in between, say, maybe sailing on the next ship to wherever they were going. And they're
you go down through a whole various things.
Through a whole load.
Charles Dickens visited here 1850.
Yes, he did. And what some people might know is that Norwell Court, it's no longer Norwell Court, up in Rochestown. They say that he stayed there and he actually based Miss Havisham on the house there in Norwell Court, and he was down here and he was speaking down here and he used to do talks and lectures, and so we take in everything that we have. Any famous person, you have to say, right, they were here too, because it might click with one person and say, well, that man was there, who else was here?
Let's talk about, you have here in the museum models of ships. There's a particular one that was built here, one of the first steamships in Ireland.
Yes, the first steamship built in Ireland was the city of Cork. It was built actually where this room is now. So I suppose we're very lucky that our history and our heritage, that this building was here for us to use. It was actually, as I said, built here in Cork. The engine came from England, but Cork people and Passage people, being Passage people, went away and decided, right, we'd like it to be fully Irish. So the following year or so after that, they did the Waterloo, and the Waterloo was completely made in Cork. Everything made here. And the steam engine was actually built down by Hive Engineering. And what they did, they brought it down on tenders, down on boats, the engine, to put it in here. So we are using, as they say, a tagline, I suppose, that we were the birthplace of Ireland's steamship industry, even well before Belfast were even thought of doing anything like that. And I suppose when you look across the river then at Cove, if it wasn't for the Hennessy brothers that had this vision to do this, you wouldn't have the like of the cruise liners coming into Cork Harbour or into Cove then either. So this is what this is where we say, as I said, Ireland's birthplace of steamship industry.
Okay, let's go along. You've another model here, the Cirrus.
Yeah, the Sirius, that was captained by a Passage West man.
Which is a steamship with mass sails as well.
Yes, it was the first steamship to cross the Atlantic completely by steam. And it reached New York before any of the other ones that were there. So we're proud. I know that people would say it wasn't built in Passage West, and well, the family were from here. The family are still very, very much involved in the history and heritage of Passage and of the museum, and we're proud to say that the man who captained it actually came from just up the road, and he captained 4 ships, and on his last one, he never made it home.
What happened?
They said there was a pirate on his deathbed, actually gave the description of a ship and the captain that he plundered and he killed. And they said that was Captain Roberts. So when you think a man who travelled around the world to get people from A to B, to think he never came home. It's sad to think of that, and that in death his family were never together.
If we move on, then you have photographs on the wall here of 1918. It was a base of all, the US Navy.
Yes, between 1917 and 1919, the US Navy were in Cork Harbour, and they were over in Admiralty House over in Cove, but also based here down in the granaries in Passage. FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, was actually Secretary of State, I think, at the time, and he was in Monkstown Bay on one of the chasers. But
which is, you have here, the submarine chasers, the whole fleet of them.
Yes, the whole fleet of them there, and there as well you can see the band practice. They used to practice there, and they were always up and down in the town, and there was a lot of the men married local women, and they went to America to live. So we had that for years, and then all of a sudden, when everything moved, when the water was then dredged and ships used to go up, there was no ships coming into the harbour down this direction, so then businesses started failing, and so it's really now we're hoping that it'll take time, but we'll start building up Passage West to the state it used to be years ago.
Well, you're just a couple of miles from Cork City.
Yes,
so you had Charles Dickens, you had FDR. Who else did you have?
We had Emmett Dalton as well in 1922 down in the square in Passage. He actually stood there one Sunday morning, and they're saying we need to fight for Ireland and we need to get Ireland together, and so like that, very, very lucky that we had all these important people here.
If we look around your museum, what else should we be looking at?
We have a few models, as you said, around the place. There is also some of the old tools that would have been used for the building of many of the ships and the various dockyards that would have been between Passage, Monkstown and Cove, of course. And some of the ones we have here, like that one, the paddle steamer America, this was in a dry dock just down the road there. And to think that you can see the size of it, how many people that employed in the area, all that is gone now. You have block makers, you had, my own father was a catch boy, as they called it. He was 13 and a half and in the dock. And all those trades are gone now.
What's a catch boy?
A catch boy is that, with the riveting, that you had a person on the outside, they had the big hot steel, they'd throw it in, and my father would be on the other side with a bucket, catching the excess coming in, which was a lot for a 13-and-a-half-year-old to do. When you lived any area kind of close to the sea, wherever you were, you always had work in a dockyard, but that's gone now. And we also have here, I don't know if people would know the story of the Mary Russell. It was a ship that the They were going to Barbados, backwards and forwards. The ship's captain went mad. He brought different people, 7 people down altogether, down into talk to them. But it showed the power that the captain had. When each one of them never turned back up, the other person went back down. And they found out after he went mad, there was a mutiny. They caught him when he came into Cork, and he was brought away and he was put into one of the mental institutions in Cork. They said that whatever they called it at that stage, but his mind went. And one of the young men, is buried above in the cemetery, the old cemetery as we call it, in Kilmurray, above the top of the hill. We're so thrilled and so honoured to be standing in a room where all of this started, all of this history, all of this heritage started, and to think that how many years later we're here to continue their legacy.
So you've been open since last summer. When are you opening again for the next season?
We will be opening again the end of February, start of March. But if anybody wants to come in, people can go onto our website, passagemuseum.ie, and we can open for groups if any groups want to come in. Mostly it's operated by volunteers. A lot of work by volunteers, but we're very, very lucky with the group we have.
And many thanks to Angela Murphy of the Passage West Maritime Museum.